Dubs OT.
Can't wait.
With John Dickinson.
Hey, JD, what you up to, sugar? Long time no talk to.
On KNBR 104.5 and 680. Streaming live at knbr.com and on the KNBR app.
That's just determination. So Anthony Melton's still playing. Porzingis lasers in a three. Let's point at Guy Santos because Guy Santos set the screen for him, so it's reciprocated. You're setting the screens for guys. You don't get a stat, open up a drive. Now someone setting a screen for you. Still a 20-point lead, but something to be excited about.
Yeah, Kristaps Porzingis makes his Warriors debut. Better in the second half than the first. Warriors with kind of a fake rally in the fourth quarter after they get down by as many as 34. They wind up losing to the Boston Celtics inside Chase Center, 121-110 in a game that for the most part wasn't that close. Welcome in, welcome back. It is Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader. 808 KNBR, the number 415-808-5627. It's a pleasure to be back here at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City for the second time today. Of course, doing the 2 to 6 show, Dirty Work, sitting in for Copes and Depop along with Larry Kruger earlier. And oh, look, we have a friend. We have a former and always, of course, member of the Dubs OT community. It is the great Greg Silver joining me here on the Sports Leader. What's going on, Greg?
What's going on, JD? It's good to be here, even if tonight didn't maybe offer the best entertainment. A little bit fun there in the fourth quarter, but you said it right there. 34 points was the most Boston led by, and once they pulled away in the second quarter, you just kind of realized, and you got the sense in the building too, when you don't have Jimmy Butler, when you don't have Steph Curry, you don't have enough offensively to make a deficit like that. Even with that much time left in the game, that's tough to overcome.
Yeah, it is, and too much to overcome. And kind of the story of the day, it was twofold. The good news, Kristaps Porzingis able to make his Warriors debut, and what can he bring to the table? I think he showed, especially in the second half, the high end or the positive end of what he can bring to the table. A lot of what everybody knew in terms of the shooting, the ability to get some mismatches in the post and score at ease. In addition to being a defensive presence. But it was a pretty rough first half go for Porzingis overall. He wound up being out there when Boston went on a couple of their big runs early on in the second quarter and basically to close the second quarter as well. So Porzingis ended up, though, as being part of the comeback, only a -4 for the night. But at one point, he was in the 20s in terms of minus because of the poor first half and really second quarter, because his first minutes were at the beginning of the second quarter. Couple of stints there that didn't maybe go as well. But overall, the positive of Porzingis tonight was outweighed by the negative news as it related to Steph Curry, because I thought, and I think everybody thought when we were last on for Dubs OT going into the All-Star break a week ago last night, that Stephen Curry was going to be back and playing in this game. And with 27 games to go, it would be sort of go time for the Warriors. And not only did he miss the final 5 games before the break, but the All-Star game. And the expectation was that he was going to come back and practice yesterday and basically be cleared not so fast. Steph still with some pain in that knee, had to undergo another MRI. And not only did Steph not play tonight, but he's not going to play on Sunday afternoon against Denver. He's not going to play the games in Memphis and New Orleans. And he's also not going to play when the Warriors return home after that 2-game road trip against the Lakers on February the 28th. So early March at the earliest for Stephen Curry. And tonight, unfortunately for the Warriors, they were just flat out overmatched defensively, offensively at times. Celtics kind of a well-oiled machine despite not having Jason Tatum this year. And I think the Warriors, one of those nights, they haven't all been this way, Greg, but they get a little bit of a glimpse at what an extended absence with Steph along with Jimmy could look like for this team in the final now 26, unless he can get back here relatively quickly. But we know that's at least going to be probably another 2 weeks.
Well, and the best part of Jimmy Butler a year ago at this time when they made that trade deadline acquisition is not only what he did for the culture, not only what he was able to do for a different style of pace and controlling the game, he could create his own shot. And even if he wasn't creating a good shot, a lot of the time he was creating his own fouls and getting foul shots from that. So when Steph Curry's out, of course it's going to make the defense have a lot easier time when you don't have that assignment. We get that. But you also don't have that many shot creators. I think DeAnthony Melton, since he's gotten his legs back underneath him, coming off the ACL surgery, he's looked really good, and I like his fearlessness when he attacks the paint. But Brandon Podziemski, not really a shot creator. Guy Santos has been a fun story where he plays hard and he can give you a lot of clutch moments. He's not going to create a shot. Draymond Green can create shots for other people by being a floor general, but when you don't have Steph Curry, you don't want him actually taking the shots, right? So I mentioned the offensive side of that and how the Warriors, look, they scored 32 in the first quarter. Will Richard was great. I'm thinking, okay, maybe they can hang in there if they can tighten up the defense. But then the offense stopped, and the defense just was a leaking faucet from the get-go. So it got us ballooned as 34, and they did make it kind of interesting for a moment there in the fourth quarter, but never interesting enough to where you thought, hold on, is this actually going to happen for the third time without Steph?
I think they got it down to 111.99 was the closest they got to. It was 105.90, and then the Celtics hit a couple of buckets. It was 111.99, and Peyton Pritchard put it away with back-to-back threes to make it 117 for the Celtics. And, again, that winds up proving to be the final difference. But you're right, second quarter, only 22 points for the Warriors. Poor beginning and poor end to the second quarter is really what had the Warriors down 23 at the half. And, 74 points allowed in the first half. The Celtics were just having their way on drives. They were having their way on cuts. They were having their way shooting the basketball from three-point range. I mean, you look up, and, Boston for the game ends up 23 pointers made. The Warriors actually hit 17 tonight. And at one point, I think Boston had 12 and the Warriors had 11. This was in the first half, and the Celtics were up basically 20. And you usually don't see that in a game where the teams are relatively even from three-point range. But you look up in this one, and the Warriors just get clobbered tonight in terms of points in the paint. They give up 58 in the paint tonight. And the Celtics, again, when they weren't just blowing by Warrior defenders, they were beating them on back cuts and with ball movement. And when they weren't doing that, they were getting the rebound as well, which is another area where the Warriors wind up really, really struggling, a 54-40 advantage when it was all said and done on the board. So Celtics at this point, especially for as shorthanded as the Warriors are, kind of running on another gear. They have found themselves this year without Jason Tatum. The Warriors fought hard over the last couple of weeks without Steph post-Jimmy injury. I sort of wondered before the break if Steph couldn't come back, how long could that compete stick with the Warriors? And tonight, I think, is the first in what could be another one of these alarming signs if they have to go too long without Steph. And again, it looks like it's going to be at least another 4 to 6 games minimum that he's not going to be out there.
So it's really interesting when you look at it from the standings point of view, because when we've gotten to this point, each of the last 2 seasons, and both of those seasons since Dubs OT started, it's been a really similar story, right? Where the Warriors want to compete. They have Steph Curry in his prime. At the beginning of this journey with us, they had Klay Thompson. They still got Draymond Green. And it was, 27-12, but that was a sprint to just end up at the 10 seed. Then last year, you had the 23-8 sprint with Jimmy Butler, and that was actually enough to get you into a playoff series and upset Houston on the road in Game 7. This time around, though, it's a lot different, where it's very clear that the teams in the Western Conference, and namely those top 4, they are well above you, not just in terms of record, but how they function. And I think they would throttle you in a 7-game series. But you also have something different where there are 5 teams that are not going to make the play-in tournament, period. They're just going to be done. And we got 5 teams, at least, that are actively trying to tank in the Western Conference. So the Warriors are kind of floating around, and you're thinking, yeah, look, as long as they're making a push to try to compete, they're probably slotted to be in the play-in tournament no matter what. But to your point, above it all, JD, if you don't have Steph Curry for a long stretch of that, you could be trying to compete all you want. I don't feel good about you winning any game, including those against the tanking teams, which, by the way, make up a large chunk of your schedule. You still could fall out of the top 10.
Well, and they're going to get a couple of those games coming up against New Orleans and Memphis. They got a couple against the Kings coming up in the final week of the season, and others in between, Utah in a couple of weeks. So we'll see how it all shakes out for Golden State. There are going to be some quote-unquote winnable games ahead, but as we've seen, the longer they have to play without Steph, in addition to not having Jimmy, the definition of winnable can change really fast, I think, for this Warriors team. 808 KNBR, the number, 415-808-5627. To jump in and join the conversation if you want to do it on the phone lines or the Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line as well. It's the same number, 415-808-5627. The best YouTube chat in sports, off and rolling. We appreciate everybody watching here on YouTube and Twitch. We do have Kyle Haar in our Daly City studios. Kyle, good evening to you, my friend, as we bring you in. Great to be back with you after the break. I hope it was a wonderful break. I know you had a few shifts in between, as I did not. So I'm the rustiest, I think, of everybody. I mean, Greg's been working normal. I think you've been working relatively normal. I'm the guy that hasn't opened up the microphone in 7 days before 2 o'clock this afternoon. But it's good to see your face. And, Kyle, it's good to hear your voice, my man. Thanks for hopping in here.
Oh, dude, it's so good to be back. And good to start out the second half of this All-Star break with us trio, you, me, and Greg Silver here. But Jenny, you had a little bit of a warm-up earlier today. You had a little 2-6. So it seemed to go pretty smoothly with Krug. Sounded good.
Oh yeah, I'm rolling. I'm back. I'm back. I don't need any extra time. I don't need a second MRI. Only the one that I had last Thursday. It told me what I already knew, which is I'm sick in the head, and we move forward. We move forward. Take a little break. Come back stronger.
I was fiending for some basketball after, and the All-Star game and activities. Those did not do it for me. Watched a little bit of PGA Tour, watched a little bit of the Olympics, but I was I need some basketball. Yeah. And then I come back and I see the Warriors down 30 in the middle of the second quarter,
Yeah, ugly to see that, although not completely unexpected. Although I will say, I do think the Warriors kind of had us thinking, based on the way that they competed before the break, that maybe they'd be able to avoid some of the lengthy stretches like they had at different points tonight that wound up putting them down by 34. Not going to be the case again the longer that they have to play without Steph. And unfortunately, it's going to be longer than anyone had hoped, I think, officially, with what was announced really yesterday that he wasn't going to play tonight. And once he wasn't going to play tonight, immediately it started to think, oh, wow, well, if he's not going to play tonight, he's probably not going to play Sunday. And then there's almost going to be a reevaluation that's going to have to go on from there as to when he would be able to play. And now we know he's out at least for the rest of February and probably at least the first game or two as we start to get into March. All right, let's get to the YouTube chat. It is the best YouTube chat in sports. Kyle, I'm going to let you fire away, although apparently we have 3 different people now that can all put the comments up on the screen. But we're going to leave it to Kyle. Kyle's clicks here. Clem Ackers chiming in, first reaction of the night. This game felt like it was over at first tip. Heal up, Steph. Yeah, it really did, unfortunately, feel that way. Although the Warriors did hang in offensively, Greg, as you pointed out in the first quarter. They hit some shots early. The Celtics really get after you on the offensive glass. They have a lot of hustle players that get after the boards. But the Celtics they just hit a gear as that first quarter went on, and it really felt like they were never out of that gear until the fourth quarter when the Warriors made that little mini run, Greg.
Exactly. No, I mean, what'd you say, 23 threes overall, and the Warriors ended with 17, as you noted, and so it was the points in the paint where at halftime I think the Celtics were doubling them up, and you said 58 for Boston at the end of it. You just can't have that for the Warriors, and, I mean, that starts with Draymond Green anchoring the defense. Al Horford came in, didn't do much better. Kristaps Porzingis, you'd like a little more shot blocking capability in defending the paint, but look, he was getting his first run, and am I really going to put that much on him for being a minus in the second quarter when the entire team was kind of stinking it up? Not necessarily, but yeah, offensively, you got to be able to score when you don't have Steph. And again, that actually wasn't an issue for a lot of the first half, and then it sort of shut off there mid-second quarter. But the defense never found a way to tighten up.
No, they did not. And to that point, it did feel like the game was over. I'll say mid-second quarter. It felt like the game.
I mean,
really,
so the Warriors
the end of the. I mean, it was that second run at the end of the first half that really put it away, because that put the Celtics up by 23 at that point.
I think the Celtics started 17-2 to begin the second quarter, and the Warriors had 4 points through nearly 8 minutes or something like that. So right around that point, you're thinking, okay,
yeah,
it's not happening.
It's not going to be their night. Anyway, KNBR, we'll get to Danny in Vancouver in just a second. Let's get a couple of more clicks here real quick. Gene McIntyre chiming in. Good to hear from you, Gene. The three best players are on a minutes restriction. Steph will be on one when he gets back. Yeah, not great when you look at now Melton, who's been on a minutes restriction. Horford's on a minutes restriction to a certain extent. You've got Porzingis on a minutes restriction, and then Steph, of course, is going to be on a minutes restriction for sure. Although you hope if he has to miss long enough and he can ramp himself back up, that minutes restriction might be closer to 25 or 30 pretty quickly. Steph hasn't been on as strict a minutes restriction in his returns as some of these other guys have been, because Steph, knock on wood, hasn't really had the catastrophic type career-altering injury. He had the broken hand, obviously had the ankle issues early in his career, but broken hand is not coming back from an ACL or an Achilles or something like that. All right, one more before we hit the phones. From Gene, we move to Robert Brown. Always great to see Robert chiming in here in the chat. They're basically a lock for a play-in spot, so I don't see them rushing him at all. Yeah, I mean, you laid it out, Greg. I mean, they would have to, and I said it, I think it was 8 games they'd have to lose in the standings before play tonight. I'll kind of update everything now, but the Warriors are 8th at 29-27. They still have a 7.5 game lead. Only 6 in the loss column, I will say, to Memphis, but a 7.5 game lead. So that's basically 7 to 8 games. We'll call it 7.
Yeah.
That would have to flip in the standings.
And let's remember,
with 27 to go, or now 26 to go, and Memphis actively trying to lose games.
As great as that comeback was in the Guy Santos game-winning layup in the final stop, Memphis also did help them out in that process to get it started.
Well, Memphis didn't want the Warriors thinking that they had action if things went down the wrong road with Steph being out. They didn't want Memphis to think, or they didn't want the Warriors to think, oh, maybe they'll come after one of these lottery spots. But again, we're a ways away, I think, from that. We'll see how long Steph's going to be out, and we'll see if the Warriors' compete factor can return here. Beginning with Sunday, win or lose against Denver. Obviously, that game is going to be incredibly difficult. It would be even with Steph. But to me, the true tell of where this thing is going to wind up is going to be the 2 games that follow the Denver game, both on the road, both against those teams that basically are actively losing in New Orleans and then Memphis back-to-back. So there's going to be some players that play the first that won't play the second, and some that play the second and don't play the first. It'll be interesting to see how the Warriors divvy it up. As Gene said, Horford will play one and Porzingis will play the other. Melton's going to have to pick one. Can they get enough from the others? Because Melton has been such a key cog in this Warriors machine here with and without Steph. So I think we're going to find out after those 2 games a true indicator of, where are the Warriors going to be at here if Steph ultimately has to miss, let's say, the first third or first half of March before he has the ability to come back.
Yeah, exactly. Kyle, let's keep it going. I miss Kyle's clicks.
One more, Kyle. All right, Rebel to Sounds. The team played better when Draymond and Pods were off the floor. Yeah, it feels like that big run often has come with Draymond specifically off the floor. And
Moody was pretty rough, too. Tonight.
He was pretty bad tonight. Not locked in, but also, there's a difference between not being locked in and being overmatched. And I think tonight it felt maybe a combination of both, but tonight it felt more overmatched to me than not locked in. Although, as we often say, when there's bad news about Steph, usually the barometer for the Warriors is Draymond, and Draymond all of a sudden looking up at, again, I keep coming back to, I think a lot of the fight that the Warriors showed, Greg, in the lead up to not only the trade deadline, but the All-Star break, even without Steph, was to basically fight for Steph's return, for that to matter. When you get the news on the day you're playing the first game or the day before you're set to play your first game that he's not coming back, I think that's as big a blow, if not a greater blow, than finding out 3 weeks ago that you were going to be without him up until the All-Star break.
Oh, for sure.
And because you're thinking you made it to a point where 29 and 26, all things considered, you feel okay about. Now it's go time. Porzingis is coming in. Yeah, you don't have Jimmy, but now you don't have Steph. And I feel like people maybe, let go of the rope a little bit, not intentionally necessarily, but there's just a natural, and again, the standings play into it. Like, if anybody that's smart looks at the standings and says, well, they'd have to be pretty bad to not make the play-in tournament. They're not anywhere close to bad enough to where they'd look to tank. So, yeah, Draymond either didn't have it or was overmatched. Maybe a little bit of both. Podziemski's the one, and he took a really bad early shot clock attempt in the first 2 minutes he was on the court, and
then I feel like he didn't shoot for 2 quarters.
And then it was like an overcompensation, and so Pods is somebody. Again, I've kind of laid out the fact that I really think they're stuck with Pods in a sense that he's going to get a raise in terms of an extension, or he's not. If he does, you can't trade him for the higher money, so you're stuck with him on the roster next year. It would be more beneficial if he was able to be traded at a higher number, because then he could be thrown in a trade with others. You can't really do that. And then if you wind up at a stalemate in terms of the money that he wants versus what you want to pay him, it just kind of turns into this Jonathan Kuminga deal all over again, where the Warriors can hold firm, he can hold firm, they can play out restricted free agency and make him go get an offer before ultimately re-signing, and that doesn't do anybody any good in terms of the ability to use him for somebody that can be put in a deal along with draft compensation to be able to bring a player back that might have the ability to help a Steph, Jimmy, Melton, Porzingis type team in the second half of next year get back to being able to make a little playoff noise. So I think they're actually in a weird way stuck with Podziemski, because I don't think he's going to be good enough to where he's a no-brainer keeper. You like him with the Jimmy Butler team a hell of a lot more than you like him on the non-Jimmy Butler team, but he still doesn't make any money. So he's hard to trade, even if he has some semblance of value across the league, should he be packaged with picks and other players.
You know what you lost in addition to Jimmy Butler? You lost good Podziemski and good Moody.
And good Podziemski more than good Moody.
Yeah.
And I think, that's something that's going to be interesting to look at as far as the final 26 games, because, how much do you let bad finishes for those two really sour your overall opinion of them versus what you believe they can be in the Jimmy Butler, Steph Curry co-environment, and how much in the meantime does that hurt their individual value, I think is also something to keep an eye on. All right, let's get to the phones. 808 KNBR, Danny in Vancouver, our tip-off caller here on Dubs OT on the Sports Leader. What's going on tonight, Danny?
Hey, gentlemen. It's great to have you back, you and Greg, on the show tonight, along with Kyle. So that's awesome. Glad to have you back. I don't know if you'd use the G word, gutless, but I would say this game had lacked a lot of intestinal fortitude. There was sort of that, faux comeback in the fourth, which I guess was better than nothing. But it was just, as you said, I think the game was over in the second quarter. So, very disappointed in Draymond. I thought he was absolutely awful, and unfortunately, he's more missed than hit now in his games. He'll still have some solid games and play good D. I don't think he was overmatched, JD. I just think he was bad. I just think he, it was a non-effort. So that was really disappointing. And regarding Steph's injury, I think I agree with you. I think if they weren't kind of set into a play-in team, that they would shut him down for the season, because I figure he's gone at least 2 weeks. So he's going to miss at least 6 or 7 games minimum. So there'll only be maybe 20, 21 games left, I think, if my math is right. So
yeah, there's 26 now. So yeah.
Yeah. So 19, 20 games. So it's too much to just shut it down. And if they're in the play and they can't just tank. Although, it's even worse than that because the teams below them it's going to be a tankathon. They're going to be tanking like crazy.
And
so,
they have a major head start. They have a major head start, Danny, on the Warriors at this point.
Yes. So it's kind of disappointing. It's just going to be a rough 6 games or so, and there's no help on the way. I mean, KP was good tonight. I mean, first game back. I mean, he's got some talent, obviously. I mean, he's a quality player, but he's not going to be able to carry them. But last thing I'll say, I know they can't maintain that full court press and that super defensive squeeze, but I just wish sometimes that would kick in. Not in the fourth quarter. I wish they could pour it on a little bit because at least, at least there's some effort there and it keeps the game within reach. So anyways, I look forward to your comments, gentlemen. Thank you.
No, appreciate it, Danny. Thanks for the call. 808 KNBR, the number, if you want to jump in to Danny in Vancouver slot. Yeah, there's a lot of teams that have a head start in the tankathon on the Warriors. And it's funny, somebody said to me in the media room at halftime that the whole tanking topic came up. And I said, well, and I just, very matter-of-factly, I said, well, what's the worst the Warriors could be? And, they're 29-26 at that point. And I said, okay, so 29-53. So basically literally, right? They could, if they lost every game the rest of the way, they could get to 29-53. 29-53 is not, that is nowhere close to where.
Yeah, the Kings just lost their 15th straight.
A lot of these teams are going to be. So it's just like they are too far out. And we'll see. How long Steph is ultimately going to be out. Does the numbers change on this? And I know last year, Dallas was a play-in team that ended up winning the lottery. Right? Like they wound up being a team that won a play-in game and then got beat. So they had some of the worst odds to get the number 1 pick of any team. But that doesn't happen most years. And typically it's teams in the 7 to 9 range are about where you have to be able to move up significantly in the lottery. I know the team with the worst or the best odds hasn't hit. The worst team in the league hasn't hit, I think, since 2019 overall. Obviously, the Warriors are not going to be in that mix. But you would almost, to give it a realistic shot, even if you wanted to go down that road, you'd have to basically get to about the 8th worst. And I'm looking at that right now. The 5 teams, 6 teams. I'm looking at 5 teams in the West for sure. I'm looking at least 3. Could you get to – I think you're talking 9-10 in terms of where your slot would be. And that's if you lost basically every game the rest of the way, which is obviously not going to happen. So I would say let's get that out of your mind if you're a Warrior fan thinking it's even a possibility. The math on it, I'm explaining it to everyone one time here. The math of it really doesn't compute when you look at a lot of these other teams who have the significant head start.
No, this ain't the year for the tanking talk because that should have started well a long time ago where Utah was thinking about it. Memphis was going in that direction. Sacramento, New Orleans, and Dallas all have been heading in that direction. So as far as the Warriors and their seed, again, any game without Steph and now going to be without Jimmy for the rest of the year is a losable game as long as Steph is out. But I think the lowest I realistically seeing them finishing is probably 10. Portland has some momentum, and they had a crazy start to their season, right, with the whole Chauncey Billups situation. But they're trying to build something, and they got a bunch of young guys. The Clippers had this miserable start, but then they've turned it around to where maybe they could surpass you. I don't really see the Warriors falling below the other teams unless they just completely go on an all-time skid and Memphis wins enough games to somehow jump them.
And you're saying 10 in terms of the 10 seed,
yes,
not 10th in the lottery, which is what I was kind of laying out. You'd have to get to the 10th spot basically the 10th worst record in the league to get to a point where you'd have a realistic shot at being able to move up into the top 4, because they pick the actual ping pong ball numbers for the top 4, and then everybody else from there gets ranked from the worst record until you get to the team with the best record after they actually physically draw for four different teams. Where are you on Draymond? Was it effort or just bad tonight? Danny didn't think it was effort. He just thought, or Danny didn't think it was overmatched. He thought it was just bad. 0 for 7, 0 for 5, minus 28 in 19 minutes. That is a game worst. Minus 28. Moody was minus 27. Porzingis made up for it in the second half. He was in the 20s at one point. But yeah, I mean, Podziemski even. I mean, Draymond was brutal in this game tonight.
I love Draymond Green, but I don't see how you can say anything other than he was not locked in from the jump. Draymond's 3 best performances this year, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, what he's known for, maybe they've all come against the same player in Victor Wembanyama. And they recently played the San Antonio Spurs, and the Spurs had another gear that they could kick it into. The Warriors didn't. And at the same time that their offense kind of stalled out, the Spurs got it together, and it was tied by the end of the third quarter. That wasn't a shock that they ended up taking that game. But the reason that the Warriors got out to that lead and were up 16 in the third quarter was because they were playing such clean basketball, and Draymond Green was a menace on defense going against a guy who's damn near a foot taller than him. So he's still capable of playing at a really high level on a given night if he can get himself up for the matchup. Tonight, and like we've seen on a lot of nights this season, he just didn't have it from the get-go. So it's not an ability thing for me with Draymond. I don't see how you can look at the larger sample size, and particularly the most recent Spurs game into tonight, and say it was anything other than he just simply wasn't locked in. It was all around a miserable performance.
All right, let's take our first time out. 808 KMBR, 415-808-5627. Greg, I'm going to give you the option. I know you got a long day ahead of you tomorrow. You're on 10-2 with Larry Krueger. Some final thoughts, or hang for, it's up to you. There's no pressure, but I need a quick decision here.
I'll go final thoughts because I know Larry Krueger is going to have a full 16-pick mock draft. I'm not making that up. He literally tweeted one out in the middle of the game.
I
and
saw,
I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I'm going to have to be ready to go at 10 a.m. tomorrow. So I do have my beer. I see my boy Dom in the chat. Appreciate Dom for sending me a Temple of the Dog sticker, by the way. Dom's got the best music taste out of any member of the Sports Leader audience. Final thoughts is, here's an existential one for you on the Warriors. Next season is starting right now. And I'm not saying that in the context of they are actively going to tank, because we just went through that whole thing. But this is a time to see if the Kristaps Porzingis experiment is one worth extending into a timeline when you will have Steph, you will continue to have Draymond Green, and you could theoretically see it maybe fitting with Jimmy Butler. You're not going to get the Jimmy Butler answer part of that this year, of course, because of the torn ACL. But the real harm in Steph missing all this time is you should want to see a Steph Porzingis pairing as much as you possibly can to get information of how you're going to address next season and go into it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you have to be careful how you evaluate some of the guys that remain if this group has to play too long without Steph, in addition to not already having Jimmy. But because – and I think Moody has certainly been better than Podziemski overall. And in the time where Jimmy hasn't been around, he's been more consistent. The guy that the Jimmy Butler absence has hurt the most has clearly been – Brandon Podziemski. I mean, he's gone from being a player that is capable and steady, and you can put him off the bench and create a role, like, to somebody that frankly is unplayable on a lot of nights, but winds up having to play because the Warriors don't have a lot of options. So Podziemski figuring it out here with the runway to have the ability to try to figure it out, I think is something, because we talked about how stuck they are with the contract that they really need from him over these final 26 games. And if he can't do it, they may be forced into making a difficult decision in terms of, what you put him with in terms of other contracts to try to include in a trade. And I do think Podziemski has some value as a player throughout the league, but that is mitigated by the fact that he doesn't make a lot of money, so you can't take a lot back in return. So it's a tricky, delicate situation. You don't want to see Podziemski go and work himself into a category where he has no value across the league because he looks so bad in this post-Jimmy world that now you're having to add draft capital for him and for the guy you really want, and because you have to make the money out of it. That's where you get into a really, 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 really bad situation. All right, Greg Silver, we appreciate you. Cheers to Greg. Cheers to everybody in the chat. Cheers to Grace and Sam out here at Harmonic at Thrive City. First time out as the first segment is in the books. We'll come back. We'll get more from the YouTube chat. 808 KMBR if you want to jump in on the phone lines. Sounds at Dubs OT coming up as well as we roll on from Harmonic in Thrive City. Dubs OT on the Sports Leader.
Live from downtown.
Hurry, way downtown. Bang! Bang!
This is Dubs OT with John Dickinson on the Sports Leader, streaming live at knbr.com and on the KNBR app.
Kristaps Porzingis is in the game.
There we go. How would you spot him, Kay?
Yeah, I mean, he's really tall. He looks great in that jersey. He looks great in that number 7 jersey
Number
as well.
7.
Yes, sir.
Formerly worn by Kalena Azubuike.
Representing for 7s everywhere. I love it.
Kristaps Porzingis winds up being one of the bright spots for the Warriors in what winds up being a losing night. Celtics beat the Dubs 121-110. We're back here, Dubs OT, with JD from Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City. Pretty festive atmosphere on this Thursday night. A lot of Warrior fans in the house, a few Celtic fans here as well. The green and white travels pretty well, and they made their presence felt inside Chase Center tonight as well. But Kristaps Porzingis, I thought showed well for his first game since January the 7th, and showed well as to what level of a factor he can be, more so offensively tonight than defensively, in a world where Steph and Curry comes back. And, of course, Jimmy Butler potentially next year. What do the Warriors look to do? Do they keep Kristaps Porzingis? Does he play well enough to warrant the Warriors looking to keep him at what contract? Obviously, his deal and letting it expire frees up money to be able to sign DeAnthony Melton to the non-taxpayer mid-level, but then you'd have to fold Porzingis back into the mix, and you'd have to do it at a number that keeps everybody below the first apron due to the salary cap rules. Plenty of time to get into all of that between now and the summer, but a pathway exists to where the Warriors could wind up with Porzingis and Melton back. The decision on whether they look to move Jimmy Butler in the offseason with his expiring contract or look to keep him and have him continue to rehab off the ACL injury and return end of January, early February of 2027. That all remains to be seen. But again, Porzingis, I thought, showed pretty well for the Dubs in his debut and first game played in about 6 weeks. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Overnight Dave is in the house, sitting there behind the great Kyle Haar in the Daly City Studios. Big thanks to Greg Silver, who is polishing off his brew before heading off into the night. Make sure you check out Greg tomorrow here on the Sports Leader, as always, from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m., as he'll be joined by Larry Kruger. All right, let's get back to the YouTube chat. Observations, takeaways. What'd you guys think of Kristaps Porzingis? We the champs, babe. KP a little rusty, a little slow, but not bad. Yeah, much better second half, I thought, than first, and much more offensive impact than defensive impact. The defensive impact really was not there for Porzingis, and the Celtics looked to attack him in a big way, draw him out, try to drive by him, especially in the second quarter there. But you look at Porzingis, he did end up with a block in this one, only one rebound, again, played 17 minutes, but I thought the best part of Porzingis' game was kind of knocking a little bit of the offensive rust off in that second half stint where the Warriors were kind of having the fake comeback there to go from 34 and cut it down to 12 before he ended up out of the game and the Celtics ended up putting the game away. But I'm with you. A little rusty, a little slow, but the offensive game coming around and the means by which he can get his offense, I think, is really, we talked about the post switches and the mouse in the house and being able to throw it down to him against a smaller player and have him just make a move and shoot over the top. He did that a couple of times tonight against smaller players. He also knocked down 2 of 5 from three-point range, which is, boom, right there, 40%. He ends up with 12 points on the night, and I think you can see, if you could ramp up his minutes even a little bit from there, the efficiency by which he can be a real help offensively for this Warriors team. Wrong one, J.C. Mack. All right, J.C. Mack, instant double on Porzingis. Imagine if Steph and Jimmy are in the game. I'm curious to see if the Celtics or other teams would double Porzingis if Steph and Jimmy were in the game. I kind of think they wouldn't, but then, of course, Porzingis could go to work against some of those matchups. Yeah, the Celtics had a clear cut. We're sending 2 immediately and basically forcing him to pass out of it. One of the one turnover was on a pass out of a quick double team. It ended up getting broken up and going the other way for the Celtics. It's also an indictment of a team like Boston saying, we don't think anybody else can beat us by knocking down open shots on this Warriors team. So it was kind of a sign of the disrespect that the teams were putting out there toward what the Warriors had on the floor. And so, yeah, that's something that I think when you look at, would it be exactly the same? No, but look, again, some teams won't be able to hang with Porzingis unless they're sending a double. So it becomes kind of a pick your poison type scenario with him as to, do you just give him a shot playing one-on-one, or do you give him a kick out with the ball moving to Jimmy and then the ball moving to Steph and then the ball moving maybe to somebody else who can be a shooter that can get the job done. Let's keep it rolling. Drew Down, is Draymond really that ineffective without Steph, or was this a one-off? It's more than a one-off because we've seen it happen much more frequently this year than we have even in years past. But there are some nights, and here's the part which I don't know the answer to. Was he not into it? Was he down because of the news that Steph was going to be out for a while? Although I think everybody with the team probably had a better understanding of that even yesterday when Steph came back and didn't practice and then was immediately ruled out for tonight. And then tonight it became Sunday plus the next 3 games after that. So, but we've seen Draymond on nights where Steph doesn't play. We've seen Draymond be unmotivated and frustrated and not at his best, and you're wondering where the compete is. So sometimes it's that. I also think sometimes it's just a bad night. I also think sometimes it's just an ineffective night against a bad matchup. And I think what we're seeing with Draymond is there are more and more bad matchups for him going up against a greater percentage of the league than we've ever seen before. And so it's a little bit of that combination of everything, but we've seen Draymond be ineffective without Steph a lot more than I think anybody would want to. And so it is not, to answer the question directly, Drew Down, I do not think it's a one-off at all at this point. And, Draymond is one to keep an eye on here, I think, between now and the end of the season, because the Warriors did, and I know Mike Dunleavy bristled at the notion, but the Warriors were looking to include Draymond Green in a possible Giannis deal. And once you rip that Band-Aid off of being willing to include a player in a deal, yeah, it's for a pipe dream type level player in Giannis. But once you're willing to do it and a player maybe continues to show somewhat of a decline, then it becomes more apt to, are you more apt to look to include him in a deal moving forward in different deals? So I think that's one, because as you start to look at the salaries, Draymond has the opt-out. Does he opt out and the Warriors look to keep him for multi-years at lesser money to help get their books in order? That's going to be interesting. No cap. Joe Lacob better let Draymond Green expire after next season. I hope Joe doesn't talk him into opting out for a longer-term deal with the Warriors. I want him gone. Interesting. To me, if Draymond is going to take a lower money deal and opt out to stay for longer, then that obviously means that they'd be looking to keep him. I wonder, though, and this is where Draymond has control. Draymond can, force the Warriors' hand if he's one of the players that making $25 million that they'd want to look to move on from in a trade. If he opts out, then you can't trade him. So he can use that as basically a no-trade type clause in an attempt to get a longer deal. Oh, by the way, if he gets a longer deal, he's less tradable, even if it's at lower money, because the player that the Warriors would take back in terms of the salary matching wouldn't be as great. So Draymond is either going to be around, I think, or he's going to be around, whether it's on a longer-term deal or whether it's on the final year of the deal, unless there's an agreement in principle of potentially sending Draymond to a certain other team if the Warriors are looking to take somebody back. But that's going to be one thing along the many things to keep an eye on as we look toward the final 2 months of the season and where things set up for the offseason. But I could see the Warriors looking to Dre opt out. We'll bring you back for 3 and 40, or something like that, as opposed to 1 year left on the deal, 3 and 45. You'll get your 25, 10 and 10, but you'll get it spread out, 15 a year, or you'll get, you'll get 13, 13, 13, and it'll basically add up to 40 at that point over 3 years. So that, I think, remains to be seen, but it's definitely something to kind of hone in on here as we head toward the end of the regular season and the summer. Let's continue in the chat. Fozzie, this team without Steph and Jimmy is the worst roster in the NBA. It's not even close. Lack of depth on a team with a lot of older players is a big problem. Well, what do I always say, Fozzie? And you know this. There's two different kinds of depth, Kyle. There's the kind of depth that you like when you don't have your main guys, and there's the kind of depth that you only like when you have your main guys. And I think the Warriors have the depth where you like it when you have your main guys and you don't have anybody that factors into the equation with the ability to help in a major way when you're out without your main guys. But look, you take the best two players off of any team in the league, and that team's not going to be a playoff team, at a minimum. That being said, I said it to somebody tonight. I said it to our friend Jack Loader, who is in for Austin Scott because Austin's at spring training. I agree. I do think I think this roster over an 82-game season without Steph and Jimmy would be worse than Sacramento, who lost their 15th in a row and currently has 12 wins. So I do think, no cap. Tatum is out. Boston's a 2 seed. I hear you. They got a lot more talent. I mean, Jaylen Brown Jaylen Brown would be the second best player on the Warriors. By the way. Yes. Thank you, Kyle. I vaguely remember that. Tatum is out, and Jaylen Brown is elevated to be maybe a first-team All-NBA type of a player. So I think but Jaylen Brown's also in his prime. I mean, how old is Jaylen Brown? Is Jaylen Brown even 30? I don't think he is. Jaylen Brown's 29 and won't be 30 until October. So I mean, you look at Jaylen Brown, and I mean that's a young player in his prime that's already a Finals MVP that's getting an opportunity to grow. I mean, there's nobody on the Warriors that even sniffs that level of talent, other than Jimmy Butler, who's old, and obviously Steph Curry, who's got his own top 5 of all time career leveled out for him. So it's not apples to apples. No cap. It just isn't. All right, let's keep it rolling here in the chat. Cozy Codes. The worst part of this season is that Jimmy didn't get injured earlier. Now we are locked into the play-in and have awful odds in the draft. Yeah, you can be a play-in team and not make the playoffs and wind up in, you can wind up basically 11-14, somewhere in there. Right now, I think the Warriors would be, if they didn't make the playoffs, I think the Warriors would probably be right around 13 or 14 when you look at where the pick would be. But again, the Warriors need to be looking to move that pick. I hope, it's not in my mind going to be a good enough pick to where you'd consider keeping it even in a deep draft unless you're sure you're getting a difference maker. And at what level are you going to trust this front office to be able to draft somebody that's going to come in and be an immediate difference maker? And when I say difference maker, I say, difference maker in terms of, somebody that could come in and immediately be a rotation type player or just a starting caliber player next to Steph, next to healthy Jimmy, next to Porzingis if he's around or whoever. I think all of that has to be, something that gets, factored in and who's going to have confidence in the Warriors front office to be able to draft that player when their drafts have been so paltry, to this point. Although I think you would make the case that Mike Dunleavy's done a better job than his predecessor in terms of evaluating the lottery pick portion of, let's say, Kuminga at 7 or Moody at 14. And James Wiseman, obviously, at number 2 overall, going back to 2020 and that draft. All right, let's get a couple of more here. This segment. What do we got? Joke's on you. They need someone with some dribble penetration skills. The Celtics have 5 players who can drive and kick. The Warriors have DeAnthony Melton trying his best. The Warriors have Steph Curry when Steph Curry is healthy. Yeah, the Warriors don't have drive and kick play. The Warriors don't have beat your man off the dribble kind of players at all. They just don't. To get their own or to kick it out for others. And it is something that I think becomes even more profound when they have to go through a period of not having Steph. It was much more noticeable when you lose Jimmy than it's much more noticeable when you don't have Steph. And it's even more noticeable when you search the remainder of the league and you look at the fact that there are seemingly three to five players on every other team in the league that have the capability to do that, even if they're players that don't particularly do anything else all that well across. They've got guys that every team seemingly has three or four guys that can do that and nothing else. And the Warriors struggle to find anybody that can do that essentially at all. So I think you definitely need to add that to the list for when you look at what the Warriors can do in the offseason. Andis Brown, all the guys on the Celtics can shoot too. Tough to guard. Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, from Pritchard, Hauser can knock it down from the outside. Jaylen Brown didn't even hit a three in this one tonight. I mean, Pritchard and Hauser, 10 for 16 from three-point range. But, yeah, they've got some guys, Gonzalez, that can make some hustle plays and look to get to the bucket. But, yeah, it was just blow-by after blow-by after blow-by for a lot of the Celtics players in this game tonight. And they would kick it out, and it would lead to the ball getting swung or a wide-open shot. And you're right, they really are a true threat at a number of different positions up and down the lineup. Celtics lost Horford and Porzingis and got better. LOL. Robert Brown chiming in here. I mean, no question. And they lost both of those guys basically due to the salary cap ramifications and the aprons and looking to make a choice as to who you'd be able to keep. And look, they've been able to develop some of their younger players into key hustle guys, and they still have Derek White, who didn't do a lot tonight in terms of scoring, but moved the ball and his typical strong floor game. You got Hauser, who I mentioned. I mean, they pick up Vucevic, and he knocks down a three tonight and is a plus 17. They are a well-run operation, and I think somebody in the chat had said, "Hey, the Celtics are an example of a team that didn't go chasing the star and went to fill the gaps with some guys that are maybe lesser than the big star, and you can still have a really good team." if you have enough capable depth to be able to do that. And so, yeah, J.C. Mack, the Celtics are what the Dubs wanted to be, but have the talent to do, generate a lot of good shots that don't go in. Speaking, of course, about the Warriors, who have the ability to do that. All right, let's take a timeout. 808 KNBR, the number. We'll get our sounds at Dubs OT coming back here on the other side, and more from the YouTube chat. Warriors lose this one to the Celtics, 121-110, and the Warriors fall to 29-27. No Steph Curry in this one. No Steph Curry for at least the next 4 games as we start to head toward March. Man, time is flying by. We're here. We're talking about it. It's Dubs OT with JD from Harmonic in Thrive City on the Sports Leader.
presents the Sounds of OT.
I can see the headline now. Kerr says Warriors better without Curry.
No class, no ball.
I want to get my joy back. I'm happy here, off the court.
Now here's John Dickinson.
All right, welcome back. Sounds of Dubs OT. Warriors lose to the Celtics, 121-110. Warriors 29-27. No Steph Curry for the foreseeable future as Kristaps Porzingis makes his debut, goes for 12 points in 17 minutes, knocks down a couple of threes, couple of post-ups. Did have a block shot, but a couple of turnovers as well in this one against his former team as the Warriors lose their first game out of the All-Star break, their second in a row overall, again to fall to 29-27. We'll get to more from the YouTube chat coming up, but it is time for the Sounds of Dubs OT, and we'll get it rolling here with pregame. A couple of notes on the Steph injury. This was Shams from ESPN on the NBA Today with the update before we all got the update as to what went on with Steph Curry here over the last 24 to 36 hours that led to him being ruled out for at least the next couple of weeks.
George, I'm told an MRI in the last 24 hours on Stephen Curry showed no structural issue in his right knee, but he is dealing with persistent swelling and pain in that knee. The team is describing it as runner's knee as the injury. So Stephen Curry works out individually as he did over the All-Star break, and afterwards he deals with pain and swelling. And so both the Warriors and Curry need all of that to subside before he can try to start to play again. And it's uncertain whether that will be days or weeks more away for Stephen Curry.
Yeah, so we'll see ultimately what happens. But it's and the Warriors came out later and ruled him out for at least 10 days, which again knocked him out for tonight, Sunday, the two games on the road at New Orleans and Memphis, and then the first game back off of that road trip against the Lakers, which is on the 28th, so a week from Saturday, and obviously 28 days in February, so that kicks it all the way to March, and the reevaluation point is March the 1st, basically, if you count 10 days out, and so that would be the point at which they would usually set a timetable or figure out if he has the ability to get back into basketball activities. And so he's probably not playing on March the 2nd, is what I'm saying there. And then the Warriors go to Houston and Oklahoma City after that before heading to Utah. They come home on the 10th and then have a back-to-back. The game against Chicago is the second of a back-to-back. So I said it to Krug earlier, and again, this is my opinion of kind of reading the room. Kind of feels like he's going to be out until maybe that second week of March at a minimum, and then the Warriors go on a lengthy Eastern road trip. So can they get Steph back for the two home games before they go on that lengthy middle of March trip and get this knee soreness or this runner's knee cleared up to a point to where he can manage it throughout the course of the rest of the season? Because I think that's the point of keeping him out now, is you don't want to have it linger or continue to worsen to a point where he winds up having to get shut down for weeks or a month from now. Because if you do that, then you're talking about, okay, season over at that point, literally, not season over figuratively, but season over literally, because you start talking about it being the middle of April, and that is literally when the regular season ends, coming up on April, April 11th, I think, this year. April 12th this year is when the regular season ends, and then the play-in to come on the 14th and 15th, depending upon which seed you wind up having. All right, let's keep it rolling here. That was Shams. Anthony Slater then chimed in of ESPN a little bit later, and he offered a little bit of what the Warriors are looking to do toward the end here with Kristaps Porzingis, but kind of echoed what Shams had to say about Steph and where things are with the injury.
Yeah, this is an injury, pain, swelling that's really popped up about a month ago during a workout in Minneapolis. He
played through it for a few games. Then he was kind of re-injured it, or it was hurting more in a win over the Pistons. They pulled him out of the game. They sat him in the last 5 games before the All-Star break, and there was a lot of optimism going into the break that he would play tonight, that he would get the scrimmage in last night. But if he got back to the facility for the scrimmage and just told him the knee didn't feel ready, and that's the concern right now is the painness and swelling. It's just not going away. It's runner's knee. They did an MRI, no structural issues, so that's the good news. But you mentioned in the lead up the championship window closing. Well, this is the type of stuff that inches it like a centimeter closer to it being closed. He turns 38 next month, but a little bit of juice in the building tonight. Kristaps Porzingis, as mentioned, will make his debut. 15 to 20 minutes short bursts, but you talk to people behind the scenes. Porzingis played in that scrimmage yesterday. Apparently looked really good. His timing, his rhythm. They've really needed a second scorer since Jimmy Butler went down with the ACL injury. He's going to have to gear up and get more minutes, but once he does, I think they're going to really feature him offensively.
Yeah, and I think they're going to have to feature him offensively. I think the hope was obviously that it would be with Steph as kind of a secondary option. He may have to be more of a number one option in the time that he's on the floor. But again, you saw how dynamic offensively he can be, how versatile he can be inside out. The post-ups, the mismatches, and also the pick and pop, the draw and kick type stuff with open threes. But again, every time you see him play as well as he did at times tonight without Steph and Jimmy, it does make you wonder what it potentially could have looked like had this move been made in a world where Jimmy wasn't hurt with an ACL for the rest of the year and Steph was coming back here relatively soon. All right, let's get one more here on Steph, and then we'll get a couple on the game. Steve Kerr offered more detail pregame on just where things sit with Steph. And again, maybe a little less ominous than some of the early reports, but here's the head coach on obviously what's going on with Steph and Curry.
Yeah, there's plenty of hope that that'll be the case. And, it's just lingering soreness. And we were hoping that obviously he'd be ready for tonight after getting the All-Star break, but wasn't the case. He just needs more time.
So there it is. Needs more time. Again, I think Kerr, Kyle, trying to be, I think, a little less alarmed than I think some of the reports would have led you to believe. And even some of the phrasing in the reevaluation in 10 days and having to get a second MRI is obviously something that's concerning in and of its own right. But I don't know, that Kerr clip, I think, was maybe the most optimistic views of where things stand with Steph compared to basically everything else that we've talked about all day long.
Yeah, but I'm kind of lost because, I was with you, JD, going into the All-Star break. I kind of assumed that Steph would have been back for tonight's game. And then the second MRI happens. They say, oh, no, he's going to be reevaluated in another 10 days. So now I'm like, well, yeah, he's going to miss the next 5 games at a minimum. And where does that put him? Would they hold him out longer if needs be? Because there's not really a huge rush to bring him back like ASAP.
Well, and that gets to the standings and where they are, and 7 games in front of basically clear of a play-in spot. And so you want to make sure that you can get the runner's knee stuff cleared up. So, yeah, I think it is going to be into probably the closer to the middle of March than the beginning of March, if I had to put a number on it. And then it comes down to everybody else continuing to compete and for the Warriors' sake, try to get those games at a minimum against the other teams that are basically tanking. And the Warriors are going to get a couple of opportunities to do that here against New Orleans and Memphis coming up this week. But the other games are tough. Denver, tough. Lakers, tough. Clippers, depending upon where they are on that night, kind of in between. But if Kawhi Leonard's playing, then that game obviously is tough right there alone. Houston on the road. OKC, tough. Then you get Utah at the end of that road trip before it's Chicago, who's found itself more in the mix to be trying to lose games. And then it's Minnesota and a long road trip. So there are some games to win, but the only shot that the Warriors are going to have to win against anybody is if they get back to having their compete level ramp up to the level that it was at before the All-Star break. But you're right, Kyle. It really did become – it was surprising. The belief was when we left a week ago last night that Steph was going to work out on his own through the All-Star break, come back, practice with the team, be cleared, play tonight. If he wasn't quite ready tonight, for sure Sunday against Denver in the matinee after being back and around the team for 4 days in the lead up to that on Sunday. And so not meant to be for Steph at this point. And so now he's going to miss here the next couple of weeks as we head toward March. All right, let's hear a couple on the game. Of course, what everybody wants to know about, what did Steve Kerr think about Kristaps Porzingis and the time he spent on the floor with Horford, the time he spent on the floor with Draymond? Here was Steve Kerr post-game on Porzingis in his debut.
Well, what we already know is that it's harder for us to play two bigs without Steph. You know, Steph defies all rules of spacing, and without him, it's just trickier to play two bigs. But, you know, Draymond and Kristaps and Al are all, you know, really important players for us. And so we've got to figure that out. And because we're not going to just keep them separate from each other. They're three of our best players, and we're going to have to find better rhythm when two of them are out there together, for sure.
Yeah, and it does make it tougher without Steph, but we saw Porzingis with Draymond some. We saw Porzingis with Horford some. We saw at the end of the game, it was basically Porzingis played his best stretch in that fourth quarter run. He came in, he was playing with neither. And so that becomes its own thing. You know, his best stretch of the game was the 5 minutes that he was out there in the fourth quarter, and he was playing with Guy Santos out there as well as D'Anthony Melton, and Horford ended up coming in the game there. So it was away from Draymond. I mean, everybody played better away from Draymond in the game tonight, but it is going to be something that the Warriors are going to have to work out. I think in a perfect world, it's going to be Draymond at the 4 and then one or the other, obviously splitting time with Draymond. And there may be nights where Draymond's not part of the equation. There may be nights, obviously, where Porzingis plays and Horford doesn't, or Horford plays and Porzingis doesn't. And then you have to figure it out from there as well. But it is a new challenge with the personnel that the Warriors have now to try and figure out what the best ways are going to be to use, as Steve said, the best personnel that they have now with Jimmy gone and Steph out. And, you know, it is a case where Porzingis and Horford, in addition to Melton, are guys that the Warriors are leaning on. You know, guys that were supposed to be supplementary extra type players are now guys that the Warriors are leaning on here as we head toward the end of February and the beginning of March and the stretch run here of this season with 26 games now left on the docket. All right, let's hear from Kristaps Porzingis, the man himself. How did his first game as a member of the Golden State Warriors feel? How did he think he played? Here is Kristaps Porzingis.
I mean, it's always weird coming back after a while, you know, but yeah, I've had, you know, my ups and downs in my career, and I've been out for a bit, and, you know, I'm kind of pretty good at jumping right back in, you know, and today again was the same kind of scenario that I've been in already in my career. And yeah, I felt all right. For the first game back, felt all right, and just want to keep building on top of this.
Yeah, and I think the good news is, obviously, and it's one game, but he made it out healthy. I don't think he looked unhealthy. He looked a little slow, I will say, but he is, 7'2", and is not the fleetest of foot to begin with. But he did look a little plodding at times. But again, I thought, you know, the shot rusty a little bit on the 3, but he hit 2 of 5. And again, I thought he looked his most comfortable was on some of the post-ups, the switch post-ups where he got the ball and could just make a move and look to shoot over the top of a smaller defender. And most of the defenders on him are, in fact, going to be smaller when he stands at 7'2". So all in all, again, I think the Warriors, trusting as they always are of Rick Celebrini and the ability to keep him on a plan that can keep him on the floor and keep him productive and potentially ramp the minutes up I don't think it's going to get much beyond 25 per game, but I think if you can get it from 17 up to 25 between now and the end of the year, I think he is going to be a productive player. But the one thing we know for sure as we look at tonight, not a lot of it's really going to matter if you can't get a look of what it is going to be with Steph on the court, in addition to Kristaps Porzingis being on the court with them. And, of course, maybe eventually Jimmy Butler down the line once we get to 2027. So that your sounds of Dubs OT for this one. Again, the Celtics get the job done against the Warriors tonight, 121-110, the final. All right, let's get some more in the YouTube chat here. Our final installment of Kyle's Clicks on this Thursday night. Rhoda Woodruff. Hey, JD, I think when Steph comes back, he should just come off the bench. No need rushing anything. Our players are already vacationing in Cancun. Nah, not quite. Not quite to that point. Now, we'll see where they are when Steph comes back. Obviously, a lot can happen between now and then, but not quite, Rolda. Not quite, Rolda. Drew Down, this team is so Steph dependent. Yeah, we knew that. They are going to have to find a way to grind out some wins. Again, New Orleans and Memphis. New Orleans and Memphis. Those become massive games on Tuesday and Wednesday. Of course, they're back-to-back Tuesday and Wednesday, so the Warriors will be shorthanded in both of them unless they play everybody in one of them, and nobody among the three guys who regularly are rested with Porzingis and Melton and Al Horford. But, yeah, those are the two games that they're going to have to win because, yeah, Denver's going to be tough. The Lakers are going to be tough. The Clippers are going to be tougher than New Orleans and Memphis. And then after that, it's Houston and OKC. And now you're a week beyond the 10-day reevaluation. We're at 17 days at that point before you go and play in Utah. And we've seen that playing in Utah for the Warriors at times has been no picnic. So they are going to have to find a way to grind out some wins. And the games to grind out are the two coming up here next Tuesday and Wednesday against New Orleans and then Memphis before the Warriors come back home and take on the Lakers on the 28th. Official Dr. P. Silver already making new lottery rules for post-Curry Warriors. Silver hates Golden State and loves the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers aren't a lottery team at this point, although maybe they are in a couple of years, although probably not because they are still going to have Luka Doncic, and I think he's probably so good that if you are a lottery team, you're going to be in the 10 to 14 range, probably closer to 14. Maybe you're a play-in team that gets knocked out. That almost feels like the floor for a Luka-led team at this stage of his career. The lottery rules don't have anything to do with the Warriors. I'll say that. You can read into as many conspiracies as you want, and obviously the CBA rules and a lot of that was done to combat the Warriors' ability to just outspend in terms of Joe Lacob's willingness to pay the luxury tax at the expense of the ability to make more moves, and other teams unwilling to do it. Other teams didn't like the fact that Joe was willing to do it to help keep things afloat to a certain extent. And so they went and changed things around. I don't think the lottery stuff has anything to do with that. And obviously the Warriors are not in the tanking sweepstakes at this particular point in time. But I appreciate where you're going with that one, Dr. P. And I think a lot of the Warrior fans do as well. Bobby Bird, 1782. What was colder, the Warriors shooting or the temp outside? I tend to have a more literal brain when it comes to that, and the Warriors shot 44% tonight. 44%. Kyle, what is colder, 44%, 44, or the temperature in San Francisco right now? Well, guess what? Guess what, Kyle? It's a tie.
Oh.
It's a tie, Bobby Birdie, 1782. It is a tie. 44 in San Francisco. Feels like 35, though. Feels like 35. I can't remember the last time San Francisco was this chilly. My goodness.
Well, we got a little bit of hail over, what was it? Maybe 2 days ago now? 3 days ago?
Yeah, no, I definitely saw that. It is odd, man. We go from this like thunder and lightning, at least in the East Bay, there was some lightning the other day, and then it almost tropical weather, and now it just gets to like mountainous weather with the maybe California mountainous weather if we're talking about the 30s or feels like the 30s, but still not what we're used to. And of course, we're going to look up here probably by the time Steph comes back, and it's going to be in the 70s at least, or greater, at least in the East Bay, pushing 70 potentially in San Francisco. But technically a tie. Temperature 44, Warriors shooting percentage 44. If you want to add in the 0.8 for the Warriors, then technically it was still a little bit colder in the city temperature-wise than the Dubs. I've been saying around the chat world that the Warriors are done, and Larry Krueger agrees the championship window is closed. Hell, I agreed with Krug today that the window is closed. But I also asked Krug if he's got a crowbar, because I think it can be pried back open if you have a good crowbar and some strength and maybe a few big bodies to help you pry. And some moves in the offseason. I think it is closed right now. The question becomes, is there a means to reopen it? And I do think there is a slim pathway toward it being reopened, but it involves the Warriors' willingness to trade draft compensation in the offseason for somebody that can come in and help at a minimum. Maybe it's not the Giannis level, but somebody that can come in and help with, if you go down the Jimmy comes back route, with Porzingis, with Melton. Is Draymond part of it? Maybe. We'll see. It's all of those things. It's a lot of things that would have to work in lockstep, along the lines of a bunch of offensive lineman caliber dudes bringing their crowbars to try and pry that championship window back open. But I appreciate it. Draymond, best game of the season. Let's ride. Yeah, it was not. It was not. Maybe the worst game of the season, and that's saying something because Draymond has had some issues. San Jose Jazz fan 8. Draymond suffers from bilateral tiredness. Yeesh. Yeesh. All right, let's get to our comment of the night.
Now, time for the Dubs OT comment of the night.
Fozzie in the 925. Greg, going to get some rest and get ready for Larry to tell him about a defensive lineman from some random school in Kentucky the 49ers should draft. And that's not like UK, like the Wildcats, like De'Aaron Fox and DeMarcus Cousins and John Wall. That's like, Western Kentucky State A&T. Well, it's like the UC Davis of Western Kentucky State UNT. Right, Kyle?
Yeah, Polytechnic, what, yeah. Your A&Ms, your Kentucky A&Ms, where are you at?
Western Kentucky A&M Poly.
Ooh.
San Luis Bowling Green.
Sounds like a great school.
Oh, Robert's funny. JD turned them into an HBCU. No. Go, JD or Robert. that might have to be the comment of the night, Robert. That was funny. That made me chuckle, man. That made me laugh. All right, let's close up shop with a little fun with numbers.
This is Dubs OT with JD. Time now for fun.
I'm a fun guy.
With numbers.
No, I'm just having fun.
On KNBR 104.5 and 680. Streaming live on KNBR.com and the KNBR app.
All right, Warriors 18-11 at Chase Center. They've lost 5 of the last 6 at home. They have not been good at home, and frankly, they haven't been as competitive at home without Jimmy as they have been on the road, which I think some of that is teams playing down to them when they go into opposing teams' buildings. And so the other team kind of lays down thinking it's going to be an easy win, and the Warriors have really competed in the road games. But they got to get the compete level from the road and the home games. Celtics take the first of the 2-game regular season series. They'll play March 18th in Boston. Warriors turned the ball over only 9 times. Warriors now 21-8. They've been losing more games where they win the turnover battle of late. 30 assists. Warriors are 18-5 when they have 30 or more assists. They lose for just the 5th time there. Porzingis makes his Dubs debut, and he plays for the first time since January 7. And that was when he was playing for the Hawks against the Pelicans. 12 points, 1 board, 1 assist, 1 block in 17 minutes off the bench. That'll do it for our fun with numbers. Robert, I love you, Robert. I always get the last laugh, JD. Yes, you do, my friend. That was great. Fun way to close out the evening here, and always, Clem Akers, Krug is a maniac. That is a fact, and he will be all over that. He will be deep into that mock draft. Join him tomorrow with Kyle or with Greg Silver 10-2. I'm going to be with Dieter tomorrow 2-6, so I get a little more recovery time since I'm doing the late night show. But join me at 2. We'll be breaking down the Warriors game and talking some Giants and talking some Niners and all of that as well. Big thanks to everybody in the chat. Big thanks to the one and only Kyle Haar, of course, Overnight Dave. I saw Anthony Garcia hanging around. Anybody I left out tonight?
Yeah, Greg Silver. Greg Silver. Good to have him back.
Great to have Greg. I forgot Greg Silver. He did a third of the freaking show with me, and I forgot to mention him. Jack Loader tonight as well, in for Austin Scott on the digital side. Tough game to step in for Austin, who's typically here. But Austin down in spring training, so Jack stepped in, and a nice job for him as well. He'll be in the digital chair on Sunday afternoon as well. Join us for Just Dubs Saturday. We're back to the 1-hour shows for a couple of weeks. We've got some 2-hour shows to close out the year, but 10 a.m. Saturday, and we're back with Dubs OT. YouTube only extravaganza on Sunday because of the Giants Cactus League action. So join us right around 3 o'clock. We'll let her rip in the YouTube chat. Kyle Haar. Maybe we'll play What's in Kyle's Cup on Sunday, and a lot of fun and games. Maybe that's going to be when we debut the jump in and join the conversation via the link.
Oh yeah,
maybe we take some live joins on Sunday.
We're at the point. Steph out. Let's get wild.
Let's get wild, maybe. And again, it's not for everybody. I get it, and it won't diminish from the reading of the chats. But we may give a few people an opportunity to jump in if they want to get a little camera time in the chat. Our thanks to the people who really are the backbone, the spine of Dubs OT, which is the greatest YouTube chat in sports. So we appreciate you. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you Saturday and Sunday. Don't forget to join us tomorrow, 2-6, in for Dirty Work. And we'll talk to you then right here on the Sports Leader. John Dickinson.
No, God! No, God, please, no!